Hello. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar black Mercedes parked across the street. Something about it made my stomach twist, but I pushed the feeling aside. Walking up to our front door, I could hear music playing inside, unusual for that time of day. I unlocked the door quietly, still thinking about surprising her. The music was coming from upstairs, from our bedroom. That's when I heard it, laughter, not just Ashley's, but a man's voice too. My blood ran cold. Looking back, I wish I'd just turned around and left. But I didn't. I climbed those stairs, each step feeling like I was walking through concrete. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, I saw everything I never wanted to see. There was my wife, the woman I'd loved for over a decade, in our bed with a man I recognized as Oliver Thompson, her company's recently divorced CFO. The same man who'd been at our house for dinner just 2 months ago, bringing an expensive bottle of wine and complimenting our home. I must have made a sound because Ashley suddenly looked up and saw me. Her eyes went wide with shock, but what hit me hardest wasn't fear or shame in her expression. It was annoyance, like I'd interrupted something important. "Noah!" She scrambled to cover herself. "You're supposed to be at your meeting." The casual way she said it, like I was the one who'd done something wrong by coming home early to my own house, made something snap inside me. Oliver was already grabbing his clothes, trying to look anywhere but at me. "Get out," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Both of you. Now." "Noah." "Baby, let me explain," Ashley started, but I cut her off. "Explain what exactly? How long you've been fucking him in our bed? How many other times? How many other men?" She flinched at my words, but I wasn't done. "You know what's funny? I actually believed you when you said you were working late. I defended you to my mother when she said you were acting strange. I was proud of how dedicated you were to your career." Oliver had managed to get his pants on and was trying to slip past me. I grabbed his arm hard. "How long?" I demanded. He looked at Ashley, then back at me. "6 months, he mumbled. 6 months. Half a year of lies. All those late nights, all those business trips, all those times she was too tired for intimacy. It all made sense now. While I was planning our anniversary surprise, she was planning her next rendezvous with him. The next few hours passed in a blur. I remember Ashley crying, begging me to let her explain, while Oliver slipped out of the house like the coward he was. I sat on our living room couch, the same couch where we'd spent countless evenings watching movies, planning our future, and listened as she spun a web of excuses. "I was lonely, Noah. You were always so focused on your work," she said, as if her affair was somehow my fault. "Oliver understood me. He made me feel special." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Special? Is that what you call sleeping with a married man in your husband's bed?" Then came the kicker. "It didn't mean anything," she insisted, reaching for my hand. I pulled away like her touch would burn me. "It was just sex. I love you, Noah. We can work through this." That's when I noticed she was wearing the diamond necklace I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. The sight of it made me physically ill. "Take it off," I demanded. "What?" "The necklace. Take it off. Now." Her hand went to her throat, almost protectively. "Noah, please. You're not thinking clearly. We need to talk about this rationally." "Rationally?" I stood up, my voice rising. "You want to talk rationally about how you've been sleeping with your boss for 6 months? About how you've been lying to my face every single day? About how you brought him into our home?" She started crying harder, but I was done being manipulated by her tears. "I trusted you with everything, Ashley. My life, my heart, our future. And you threw it all away for what? Some cheap thrills with a guy who doesn't even have the decency to face me." That's when she dropped another bomb. "I'm leaving the firm," she said quietly. "Oliver and we've been planning to start our own company. The paperwork is already filed." The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. Not only had she been sleeping with him, but they'd been plotting their future together, right under my nose. All those late-night strategy meetings took on a whole new meaning. "How convenient," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let me guess. You were planning to tell me after you'd secured your first clients? Or maybe after you'd emptied our joint account? Her silence was all the answer I needed. I walked to our home office, pulled out my laptop, and logged into our bank accounts. Sure enough, there had been several large transfers to a new account I didn't recognize over the past few months.
$52,000, Ashley?
Really? She followed me into the office, wringing her hands. It was for the business startup. I was going to pay it back. With what? The profits from your little venture with your boyfriend. I started typing furiously, documenting everything. You know what's interesting? In Massachusetts, adultery and financial infidelity are both grounds for fault divorce. Did Oliver's expensive lawyers tell you that? The color drained from her face. Noah, please, we can talk about this. I'll call Oliver, tell him it's over. We can go to counseling. I held up my hand to stop her. Pack your things. You have 1 hour. Anything you leave behind goes in the trash. You can't just throw me out. This is my house too. I turned to face her fully. Actually, I can. The house is in my name. Remember? You didn't want your name on the mortgage because it might affect your credit rating for future business ventures. Funny how things work out, isn't it? The next morning, I walked into my office and requested an immediate meeting with our HR director. I needed to get ahead of this before Ashley and Oliver could spin their version of events. Karen, our HR director, listened quietly as I laid out everything: the affair, their planned business venture, the money Ashley had taken from our joint account. I have copies of all the bank statements, I told her, sliding a folder across her desk, and screenshots of text messages I found on our shared iPad that Ashley forgot to disconnect from her phone. Karen looked through the documents, her expression growing more serious with each page. This is concerning, she said carefully, especially given Oliver's position and the fact that they were planning to compete directly with our firm. I nodded. I'm not looking to cause drama. I just want to protect myself and the company. They've been approaching our clients. It's all in those messages. By lunchtime, Oliver had been called into an emergency board meeting. By 3 o'clock, he was escorted out of the building. Turns out, the board didn't appreciate him using company resources and client relationships to set up a competing business. Ashley called me 17 times that day. I let each call go to voicemail. Instead, I focused on documenting everything and meeting with my lawyer. The evidence of her financial deception made the divorce proceedings surprisingly straightforward. What wasn't straightforward was dealing with our friends and family. Ashley had already started her campaign, painting herself as the victim. According to her, I was distant, emotionally unavailable, married to my work. She'd been lonely, and Oliver had been there for her. Some mutual friends actually bought her story. Emily, who'd been in our wedding party, called to tell me I should try to understand Ashley's perspective. Marriage is complicated, she said. Maybe if you'd paid more attention. I cut her off. Did Ashley mention the $50,000 she stole from our joint account? Or how she and Oliver were planning to poach clients from my firm? Silence on the other end. That's what I thought. The real surprise came when Oliver's wife, Rachel, reached out to me. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from familiar faces. She looked as exhausted as I felt. I knew something was going on, she said, stirring her untouched coffee. But Oliver kept gaslighting me, making me feel crazy for suspecting anything. He said I was paranoid, that I needed therapy. Ashley did the same to me, I admitted. Every time I questioned her late nights or sudden trips, she'd turn it around, make me feel guilty for doubting her. Rachel pulled out her phone and showed me a series of photographs of Oliver and Ashley at various restaurants, hotels, even at the airport. I hired a private investigator 3 months ago, she explained. I have everything documented. Their little business venture? They've been approaching my family's company too. My father's furious. That's when she told me about the offshore account she discovered, where Oliver had been funneling company money. Not just the startup funds for their new business, but substantial amounts that had been quietly disappearing over the past year. The SEC would be very interested in this, she said, sliding a USB drive across the table. And I have copies of everything. I looked at the drive, then back at Rachel. Why are you sharing this with me? She smiled, but there was steel in her eyes. Because they thought they were smarter than everyone else. Because they thought they could play us for fools. And because she took a sip of her coffee. I believe in karma. The evidence Rachel provided turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. My lawyer connected me with a forensic accountant who uncovered a pattern of financial deception that went far beyond the money Ashley had taken from our joint account. She and Oliver had been systematically siphoning funds from both their companies, setting up elaborate networks of shell corporations to hide their activities. I was reviewing the latest findings in my home office when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Oliver. We need to talk. Meet me at the Griffin at 7 p.m. Come alone. I forwarded the message to Rachel and my lawyer, then replied, whatever you have to say, you can say it through our attorneys. His response came quickly. This isn't about the divorce. It's about Ashley. There are things you need to know. After consulting with my lawyer, I agreed to meet him, but on my terms, at a busy restaurant during lunch hour with my lawyer present in the background. Oliver looked different from the confident CFO I remembered. His designer suit was wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes betraying his lack of sleep. Ashley's been lying to both of us, he said without preamble. The business venture? It was her idea, but not for the reasons you think. She's been working with Leonard Chun. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Leonard Chun was notorious in our industry for hostile takeovers of struggling firms, stripping them for assets, and leaving nothing but empty shells behind. She approached me last year, Oliver continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Said she had inside information about vulnerabilities in both our companies. She'd been gathering data, client information, financial records, everything Chun would need to orchestrate a takeover. And you went along with it? I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. She had leverage, he admitted. Photos, emails. She'd been planning this for years, Noah. The affair? That was just her way of ensuring my cooperation. She has similar dirt on half the executive board. I sat back, letting this sink in. Why are you telling me this now? Because she's getting ready to make her move, he replied, sliding a folder across the table. These are copies of everything I have, her communications with Chan, the real financial records, everything. Rachel suggested I come clean before it's too late. The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too crowded. How long? I managed to ask. How long has she been planning this? Oliver wouldn't meet my eyes. Since before your wedding. She and Chen. They've known each other for years. She was his plant from the beginning. The implications hit me in waves. Our entire marriage had been a lie. Every moment, every memory, every plan we'd made, all of it had been part of her long game. The woman I'd loved, built a life with, trusted completely, had been orchestrating my professional destruction while sleeping in our bed. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Ashley. We need to talk. I can explain everything. I showed the message to Oliver. His face went pale. She knows I'm here. She must have followed me. Looking up, I caught a glimpse of familiar blonde hair through the restaurant's window. Ashley was standing across the street, phone in hand, watching us. But she wasn't alone. A tall Asian man in an expensive suit stood beside her, his hand on her lower back in a gesture that was far too familiar. Chun, Oliver confirmed, following my gaze. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. That evening, I sat in my lawyer's office with Rachel and Oliver, watching years of careful deception unravel through documents, emails, and financial records. Ashley and Chen's plan went beyond simple corporate espionage. They had been systematically positioning themselves to take control of not just my firm, but 3 other companies in our market. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Ashley, each more desperate than the last. I ignored them all, focusing instead on working with the SEC investigators who had arrived within hours of receiving Rachel's evidence. Your wife, one of the investigators said, reviewing the documents. She's quite something. This level of long-term infiltration and manipulation, we haven't seen anything like it since the Morgan scandal in 19. By midnight, Everything was in motion. The SEC had enough evidence to move forward with formal charges. Rachel's family's connections in the industry had helped expedite things, and news was already spreading through back channels about Chen's attempted hostile takeover. I was about to head home when my lawyer called me back. "There's something else you should see," she said, pulling up an email on her screen. This just came in from Ashley's personal account. The email was addressed to Chen, dated 3 weeks before our wedding. In it, Ashley detailed her concerns about me potentially discovering their plan. Chen's response was cold, calculating, "Stay the course. Once the merger is complete, you'll never have to see him again. Remember what we discussed, the longer game yields better rewards." The timestamp showed 3 a.m., the same night I'd been up late, writing my wedding vows. I left the office in a daze, driving through Boston's empty streets. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed Ashley's car parked across the street. She was sitting in the driver's seat, clearly waiting for me. Before I could decide what to do, multiple SUVs with federal plates silently pulled up, surrounding her car. I watched through my rearview mirror as agents approached her vehicle, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Ashley didn't resist when they asked her to step out. Even from a distance, I could see she was crying. She looked toward my car, mouthing something I couldn't make out. Part of me wanted to get out, to ask her why she'd spent 12 years pretending to love me while plotting my destruction. But I stayed where I was, watching as they led her away. The next morning, the story broke. "Corporate espionage ring uncovered," screamed the headlines. Chen was arrested trying to board a private jet to Hong Kong. Oliver's cooperation and Rachel's evidence had given the feds everything they needed. The investigation revealed similar operations in other companies. Ashley wasn't Chen's only plant, just his most successful one. Our divorce was finalized in record time. The evidence of Ashley's criminal activities made any claims she might have had to our assets moot. She faced multiple federal charges: wire fraud, corporate espionage, securities fraud. The plea deal she eventually accepted meant she'd be spending the next 15 years in federal prison. I sold our house. Couldn't stand to live there anymore with all the memories. Moved to a smaller place closer to downtown. Rachel and I still meet occasionally for coffee, sharing updates as our lives slowly rebuild from the wreckage our former spouses left behind. Sometimes, late at night, I still catch myself wondering if any of it was real. If there was ever a moment in our 12 years together when Ashley actually loved me. Or if every smile, every kiss, every whispered, "I love you," was just part of her elaborate performance. Thank you for listening the story to the end. Write your thoughts about it in the comments and do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next videos. Bye.